So what we're doing tonight is the role of the P&C President and obviously the P&C Vice President as well. And this is more about hints and tips and what your role is about and the aspects of your role that are really, really important. So I will be concentrating mainly on the role of the P&C President. All right, don't feel left out if you are a Vice President. And the reason for that is because a lot of what I cover in the P&C President's role will also apply to you. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to do a little bit of a survey now so that you can actually take part in this. So I'm going to bring up a survey. You'll see it come up on your screen. And the question is, what is your experience as a president or a VP? So if you could please vote there, and you'll just have to click it or tap it. Just give a little bit longer. We've had 6 out of 11 people vote. So if you can vote, please do so. I'm not sure what the interface looks like on your phone. I've seen it on both Apple and Android, but they change so much. So hopefully you will be able to see that. All right, I'm going to end it there at 9 out of 12. So ending voting there. Oh, and 10 has snuck in there. All right. Okay, we've got everybody actually, which is great. All right, so 8 out of 12 are just starting out. This is your first term as either. And then someone has done more than 2 terms, which is great. And you're just refreshing, I guess. And if you can help as well, if you've got some advice, whoever that is, I'm not sure who that is. If you've got some advice as well, please make use of the chat function. Right, and a couple of people obviously are in their second term as well. Excellent. Thanks for participating in that. And we've had, I'm going to put that up. Thanks, Adib. That is a very good question. And I was going to cover it, but I'm just going to cover it. I'll just talk about it now. Adib has asked, do we need to take notes, or I'm going to send handouts? I am going to send handouts, but from this point forward, I'm also going to record this as well. All right. So if you want a copy of the recording or a link to the recording, I will do that. But tomorrow I will send out the actual PowerPoint slides that I'm going to go through tonight. Right. So speaking of slides, there's around about 45 slides that we will go through tonight. A little bit of an introduction about things. We are, of course, WAXO. We partner with P&Cs to advance public education. It's lovely alliteration, but it's also nails it. That's exactly what we do. That's our job. All right, helping P&Cs out as much as we possibly can. We've just had someone else join us as well, and I think that's Cherie. Welcome, Cherie. If you could please introduce yourself in the chat function, that will be very, very handy and helpful to us. WAXO has a YouTube channel. We have a lot of webinars up there that I've previously recorded, and I'll put them on our YouTube channel. And the great thing about our webinars on our YouTube channel is that they actually have an index or contents, and you can actually go to a cue point and you can click on one of these cue points. By the way, you'll see me draw a lot on the screen tonight. I have a habit of doing that. I find it very helpful. So if you go to one of those cue points, it will take you to the certain part of the topic within the video that you want to watch, or you can watch the whole thing, completely up to you. We also have a website which is dedicated to the Constitution. You'll hear me use that word Constitution a lot tonight. That's called pncswa.org.au, and that has pretty much got everything about the Constitution on it. You know, we do have a question. And that is Cherie, and she has introduced herself. And she's from Millen Primary School, which is in Eastvic Park. Thanks, Cherie, and welcome. P&C Handbook, that is also available in hard copy. You can download that from our website as well. That is a great resource to have right at the beginning of the year. And although it looks the same every year, it's very similar every year, we do make some significant changes from year to year within it. So please make sure that you use the updated one, which is, of course, the 2021 one. Plus a number of resources that we have as well. And when you see our resources, please make sure they have on the cover updated for the 2019 P&C Constitution. Coming out this week, which is, I've personally been a little bit of a bubble developing this, and we have our P&C Finances e-learning. We are concentrating on finances within P&Cs, and we have e-learning course, which is non-accredited, of course. We're not a registered training organisation, but we have that coming out this week, and more information will come out to P&Cs, and there will be a link from our website so that you can do them. And to do all of them, there's around about 7 modules, 45 to 60 minutes all up, and you can do them at different times if you like. You don't have to do them all in one sitting. But they're for all members of your P&C, not just your treasurer, not just your office bearers, every single member of your P&C. And they're based on real things that happen within P&Cs. Okay, questions. Ask a question anytime tonight. Sometimes I tend to have questions just asked in the middle or at the end, but tonight, seeing as we've got 13, which is very manageable, we've got 13 people on board. If you want to ask a question, just type it into the chat function. It will be moderated. Once I view it, then I will then bring it in so everybody else can see it as well. Just like all roles in the P&C, it is about the role. It's not about the role. It's about the goal. I mixed that one up. Yeah, certainly. We repeat that all the time. It's always about the goal, about the outcomes, what you're trying to achieve. It's not particularly about the role itself. All right. So it's not about ego, and it's not about power, and it's not about politics. And if you are finding it is, you need to come back to what a P&C is about. And a P&C is about doing things for the school, and in particular, doing things for the kids at the school. All the kids, not just your own, but all the kids at the school. Always bring it back to that. And P&Cs do go through dark times. We know that. That happens. All right. And perhaps some of you on board tonight have been through that or are going through that. Always boil it down to what a P&C should be doing, and that's looking after the kids at the school. That's their job. Right, some overarching characteristics and general tips for P&C presidents and vice presidents. First one, be prepared to learn. Make sure that you know the rules. Now, you do not have to be able to repeat the P&C Constitution verbatim, but you must have a good understanding of it. All right. And some people will sit down and read the Constitution totally, and then some people completely forget about it. Please don't be the latter there. Please make sure that you know the different parts of the Constitution. And if you go through and read it once, you will always memorize a couple of things, and down the track, you will be able to come back to those things because you know it's in the Constitution. We have a dedicated P&C Constitution website, which has lots of Q&As on it as well, which answer questions about the Constitution. Excuse me. Around about 150 Q&As on that website, so please make use of that. No correct procedure as well. I'll go through that a little bit later tonight. Respect people and their time, and that's so important. It's not just about respecting people as a person when talking to them, but also their time as well as volunteers. You want to keep them and as you know, as a volunteer, if you turn up to an event, you want to know what you're doing. You want to know that your time is going to be used best. So please make sure, as an office bearer, that you do that with your volunteers. Knowing your people as well, knowing your office bearers, knowing your general members of your P&C, knowing what their interests are, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what they like, what they're great at, what they do for a job. And that can help your P&C in terms of having a great resource there to help your P&C out. Make sure you guide discussion as well during meetings when you're chairing meetings, and that's one of your roles. And don't dominate it. And sometimes when people get very experienced as a P&C president and as a chairperson, they get very confident with what they're doing, of course, and the thought comes out when someone brings up something that perhaps a newer member, it is that thought that, oh, we've tried that, we've attempted that, let's not go there. All right. So as a chairperson, what you should be making sure that you do is that you are guiding discussions. You're not dominating things, and you're not dismissing people with what they have to say. All right. So as you get a little bit more experience, sometimes that tendency that can happen. So try to avoid it. Just be aware that it can happen, and that will help you avoid it. Manage and resolve your conflict as quickly as you possibly can. Now, there are mechanisms and facilities within the P&C Constitution that will help you do that, all right? But the sooner you get onto those things and nip them in the bud, the sooner your P&C is going to move on. And one of the things that helps P&Cs or makes P&Cs fall apart really is conflict within the P&C. So make sure it is dealt with very, very quickly in an appropriate manner and by the Constitution. Everybody hates being micromanaged. I know particularly I don't like that, and I don't know anybody that loves being micromanaged. So though people have jobs within the P&C, within the P&C, it's not the job of the president or the chairperson to actually micromanage people. Give people a job, trust they're going to do it, but check on them, keep them accountable, but not micromanaging. Be a representative, of course. Your job is not to represent your own views. Your job is to represent the views of the P&C. And that is basically called being representative. Demand transparency in everything that you do. And the only time that you really don't need to be transparent, or where it's actually you shouldn't be because of things like the Privacy Act, is when it is to do with your employees. So if you've got employees, make sure you maintain their privacy. And that's under law. But with everything else, please make sure that you are transparent with what you're doing. And of course, promote good governance within your P&C. Now, and you model it as well. And good governance basically comes down to having a great decision-making process. And that decision-making process is followed through. Now, you have a decision-making process and it's within your Constitution. It's a follow through, you stick to it, and you always stick to it. Now, there are 8 roles of the president. Now, some of these are very short, but there's one in particular, which is role number 3, which is about the chairperson for meetings. That's the one I'm going to concentrate most on tonight. All right, so the other ones are quite short in terms of 1 or 2 slides, but number 3, a bit more than that. You are the link between parents and the school administration. That is part of your job. So you will probably have more meetings, you will have more discussions with the principal and the admin staff at the school than anybody else within the P&C. And your job there is to foster good working relationships with those people. If you have a great relationship with the principal and the principal is supporting your P&C, that really is half your job done. All right, I can't emphasize that enough. Great relationship with the principal makes the P&C work so much easier. You are the only organization, even though there might be other organizations in the schools or Facebook pages, you might be the only one, you are the only one that is actually legally recognized in legislation as representing the parents at the school. All right, apart from the school board, but that's a little bit different. So that's your job, to represent all parents at the school. And of course, knowing the role of the principal and staff within the P&C as well is really important. Now, your principal is, of course, ex officio. They are the only person or staff member at the school that has a little bit of a different role. All right. So they, of course, don't have to pay a fee to be part of the P&C, and that's given to them under legislation. They don't have to do that. And they have the right to speak, they have the right to attend meetings, they have the right to vote like any other member, but without actually paying a fee. They don't have to do that. Some principals will be, very outspoken and vote and all that at meetings, and some will take a little bit more of a background role, all right, and remain more neutral and abstain from voting. That's completely up to them. That's their right. The other staff within the P&C, even deputies, associate principals, they have the same rights as anybody else within the P&C, so they must pay a fee, or the dollar fee, your membership fee, or whatever it is. And they also have the same voting and speaking rights as anybody else. So they don't have those elevated rights or privileges that the principal does. Only the principal does that, or has that. Remember, if you've got a question, please ask it, put it in the chat function. Right, constitutional and legal formalities. And I know when the term constitution, that word is raised, it is rolling eyes. Please ignore them. I know that people don't like rules too much, but this is a primary operating document of your P&C. All right, you wouldn't be a P&C if you didn't have a constitution, and if you didn't follow it, and also those legal formalities too, because you are allowed to be a P&C under legislation. So ignore those rolling eyes and make sure you educate your members about the constitution. Have it visible, have it sitting out at your meeting on the table, immerse people in it. It's not a bad idea every now and then at a meeting, 2 to 3 minutes at the start of the meeting, introduce the meeting and talk about 1 or 2 rules within the Constitution. So tonight we're going to talk about Rule 27.1. Did you know that you can't do this? Or did you know that we can do this? Not a bad idea to do that so that people get an idea that the Constitution is your primary operating document and it's not to be ignored. All right, not just shoved in a cupboard. It's there for your P&C to use and to work under. Make sure that everybody abides by the Constitution, including staff at the school, including your principal. They're all bound by it. Also understand your legal obligations as an employer. Now, you are not responsible for all employment matters within the P&C, but you must have an understanding that there are legal obligations there. I mean, things to do with superannuation and wages and payments and awards and agreements. It's more towards the treasurer's side of things. But your job there is to make sure that you understand there are those legal obligations there and to keep people up to date with them. And of course, know the objects and powers of a P&C. Rule 2 and 3, the very first page of your Constitution has the objects and powers of a P&C. And knowing those and having them sitting in front of you means that you can basically make rulings based on them. Okay, so that's 1 and that's 2. I said some of these were going to be short. Here's one that's a little bit longer. This is the chairperson for all meetings. Right, the core business of your P&C gets done at meetings. I know you have fundraising events and you do all those other great activities that you do, but the core business where binding agreements are made are at your meetings. Now, there are a number of different types of meetings. The thing you will notice about these first 3 is they all contain this word, general. General meeting, annual general meeting, special general meeting. Now, any of those meetings that have general in them, you must give 7 days notice for that meeting. All right, and any financial motion going to that meeting as well. That's more of the treasurer's role, but you do need to be aware of that. So they require 7 days notice. An executive committee meeting is 48 hours notice. If you have subcommittees, now we don't dictate this or mandate it or whatever you want to call it, they are 48 hours notice. That is what our recommendation is, but that will be in your terms of reference, and I'll cover that a little bit later on. So they are the different types of meetings and basically the notice given for them. General meeting, you will need to have 1 per term as a minimum. Annual general meeting, you are only permitted to have 1 per calendar year under legislation. Special general meeting, you may not have any. All right, that's completely up to your P&C. Special general meetings are rather special in the fact that with a special general meeting, they're usually called in a situation where you need something done, but you only want to concentrate on 1 or 2 topics, and that's it. So you don't have all the reports, you don't have all the peripheral stuff. You just have that core general business. So a special general meeting can be 15 to 20 minutes long. Tonight, I'm going to talk about a couple of words. I will talk about a couple of words. I'll mention these words, so I'll better go through what they actually mean. Motion. A motion is a formal idea put before the meeting for the members to vote on. If it's passed, it's carried. If it doesn't pass, it's called that it's lost. Now, when it's passed, it must be passed by a majority of members present. Now, a majority is just simply 50% of those people present plus 1. So if you had 10 people at the meeting, 6 would be a pass or a carry. If it was 5 and 5, 5 for and a 5 against, that motion is in fact lost because you don't actually have a majority there. Now, I know that P&Cs generally, when you put something forward, a lot of people agree on it and you've got no problem carrying it or passing it or approving it. But sometimes with more contentious items, they can go down that path where you actually get a tie, and that motion is then lost. Here's an example of a motion that the P&C hold a rock and roll quiz night. What you're going to do, 24th of April 2020, when and where. That's a nice little motion. It's quite specific. That the P&C hold a rock and roll quiz night on the 24th of April 2020 at the Miami Sports Club. Now, if that was put forward and everybody discussed it, debated it, and went to a vote, and then it was carried with a majority, that then becomes a resolution. So a resolution is a motion that has been carried and then approved. And you will then, from that point on, call that a resolution. Sometimes it's a good idea, especially if you struggle to get volunteers, and a lot of the work actually falls back on the people within the P&C, office bearers, those same people that step up all the time. Sometimes it's not a bad idea to put forward what is called a conditional motion. So for that particular motion, your conditional motion is that the P&C has at least 20 volunteers registered to assist with the event by 1st of April for the event to go ahead. All right. What you're saying to people is, we can't really do this if we can't get volunteers, but we're putting this down officially. Right. So before your meetings, make sure that you give proper notice for meetings and financial motions. Don't skimp. All right. So if you say, oh, yeah, it's 5 days, that'll do. We don't need 7 days. Don't do that. It's a slippery slope from that point on. And eventually you'll start having 3-day meetings or 3-day notice for meetings. All right. Always stick to it. Stick to the rules that are in the Constitution. Make sure your start and finish time are on the agenda and the notice of meeting as well. So I know everybody puts start time. That's just obvious and logical, but don't forget to put a finish time as well, because it allows people to organize their nights around the meeting. It also says to people, oh, all right, they've got their meeting from 7 to 8. They've only got an hour meeting. Oh, P&Cs I've been to before, they've had 3-hour meetings and I never want to go back again. You're making a solid goal promise to people that you are going to have an hour meeting and you are going to finish on time. All right. So please make sure you've got a start and finish time on any type of promotion or marketing that you have for your meeting. It's not your job, but you do need to make sure that the secretary has distributed the agenda and all accompanying documents, and they are generally reports like a treasurer's report or a president's report or a principal's report. Those documents are going out to everybody. That's one of those checking in, not micromanaging things. All right, Cherie has asked a question, and I'll just bring that up so everybody else can see that. It's a good question, Cherie. Does notice for a special general meeting also require all agenda and backing info to be sent out 7 days before? All right, so you don't actually have to send it out 7 days before, unless it's a financial motion, but you do need to give 7 days notice. So a lot of P&Cs will give the 7 days notice, but the agenda will go out 2 to 3 days before. There is nothing in the Constitution that says how long before the meeting the agenda must go out. Now, most of us know in reality, dealing with clubs and associations and P&Cs, that sometimes we get the agenda the day before, and then sometimes we rock up to the meeting and the secretary hands us the agenda there. We encourage P&Cs to make sure the agenda goes out 2 to 3 days in the accompanying documents, but the notice of the meeting and the notice of any financial motions must be 7 days. Now, with your special general meeting, you're not going to have all those reports. You will simply have the agenda, and it might have 1 or 2 motions on that agenda, and that's probably it. Hopefully I've answered your question there. If not, please let me know. And I did answer the question. Great. Thank you, Cherie. All right, so the first thing you need to do at the meeting, obviously, is to ensure a quorum, because your meeting cannot go ahead officially until that quorum is actually there. All right, so your quorum for your general meetings, if your school is over 200, is 8. If it's under 200, it's 5. That is, when I say your school is under or over 200, I mean the student population at the beginning of the year. So some schools tonight will have that general meeting be 5. I could imagine Onslow will probably have that, and most of the others will have a quorum of 8 for your general meeting. So ensure it, because if you don't have quorum, your meeting can't go ahead officially. You can't make binding decisions. You can go ahead and have a discussion. You can do that. The other thing you can possibly do too is just collapse it to an executive committee meeting. As long as you've got 5 of your executive committee there, you can do that. And for a small school, that is 3 of your executive, if you ever needed to do that. It's best not to do that. It's best to make sure that you get the people there. And don't forget, you can get people to join your meetings by a form of real-time communication. So like Skype or FaceTime or something like that. As long as it's real, it's time and it's live, and you can recognize that person as a member of your P&C. Okay. So you want to then accept and introduce new members. That's really, really important. So you accept those members, you introduce those members as well, and make them feel welcome. That's really, really important, and that's to keep them coming back again. Don't ignore them. And the other thing you can do is introduce them to someone who's more experienced and a longer member of the P&C, and have them sit next to them as well. Don't allow interruptions or digressions at your meetings as well. That is probably one of the hardest parts of running a meeting. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on, and work towards outcomes always. So if things get off track, you bring people back on track, and you'll basically say to them that we need to get back on track. We need to get to this outcome. We have to be able to make a decision. Tapping your watch, making sure that people are aware that you have a time that you need to finish by. I have a question here from Sharon, and I'll bring that up. What then constitutes notice? If we set the date for the next meeting at the end of the last meeting, is that considered notice? It certainly is, Sharon. That's correct. Not a bad idea to send a reminder out, but if you've already set it, that is notice, and that's going to be well in advance of 7 days. So that's all good. No problem. Here's a nice little way to start a meeting. Sometimes people get lost for words, and I do get lots of queries from P&C presidents saying, especially new ones, saying, how do I start a meeting? How do I get this thing off? I've never done this before. It is a nice little script for you. Good evening, everyone. We have our quorum. Make sure you have a quorum first. The meeting is now open and is scheduled to run until 7 p.m. Okay, so the important part there is you've said we're open the meeting and we're going to run it until 7 p.m. So you're saying again, confirming that we have a set finishing time. I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of the executive. Looking at the agenda, you can see we have a lot to get through. Once again, you're saying to people, we've got work to do tonight. I'd like to remind participants that we will work within official standing orders and rules of debate. I'll go through that very soon. So everyone has a maximum of 2 minutes for any question, point, or debate, and may only speak once during a debate. If any member has a material personal interest in any matter before the meeting tonight, please declare that as soon as possible. So that's a really important thing to say, because sometimes there will be something on the table which you need to pass or put forward, debate, and someone in your P&C might be personally gaining from it. Now, it's fine that they personally gain from it as long as people approve that. But they need to make sure that they are letting everybody know that they are going to gain from that. So you are asking them at the beginning of the meeting to declare that interest. Once they've declared that interest, it will be minuted. When that part comes up at the meeting, or when that idea comes up or that motion comes up at the meeting, that person who's declared their interest will in fact need to leave the room for the course of debate and voting on that meeting, on that motion. Items on the agenda always have priority. If you have any item for discussion that is not on the agenda, then please see the secretary now. And if there is time left at the end, we will deal with it. If not, I will speak to you after the meeting. What we're saying there is get yourself organised and make sure that things come to us beforehand. This is another way of also of cutting down the other business at the end of the meeting, where sometimes it gets a little bit off track and can actually take a meeting over time. Sometimes, unfortunately, you get people who come to that meeting, particularly because they don't know how a P&C runs, but they've got a bee in their bonnet and they want to get something off their chest. All right. This is a way of preventing that, cutting it down, being proactive about it. And then you would say, I would like to introduce new guests, members, etc. Now, meeting structure. I mentioned in that last little spiel there about standing orders and rules of debate. Now, we have a great little booklet called the Effective Meeting Guidelines, so you can download that from our website. And note there, it's got updated for the 2019 P&C Constitution. Standing orders and rules of debate, that gives the meeting structure. That is what standing orders are. And then rules of debate give the debate structure. So once you put a motion on the table, it gives that structure. All right. The great thing about this, and some people go, oh, it's really stuffy and structured and we don't want to do that. You know, we just like to be nice and casual. Casual's fine until the point where things break down. All right. Great thing about this is it's unbiased. All right. The rules there are known, they're transparent, and they apply to every single person within the P&C. Nobody can feel that they've someone else is being favoured or there's bias against them or anything like that. It is unbiased because it's sitting there in writing. And that then takes the pressure off the chair. All right. They don't have to make up decisions on the run. It's there in the guidelines. You'll also have, or should have, a code of conduct. And we have a great code of conduct that's in our P&C handbook. But you can make your own up. You don't have to use ours, or you can take ours and edit it to suit your P&C. It's completely up to you. So you should have those two things. All right, I have a question coming up from Gemma. I will bring that up now. Gemma has asked, on occasion, parents wish to put their own concerns regarding school matters on the agenda, such as school staffing, personal grievances, and seek representation on this via the P&C. What would be the best protocol where inappropriate matters are raised? Well, first of all, going back to a point I was talking about a few slides ago, if you know the objects and powers of a P&C and what a P&C can and can't do, then you can do that straight away, because you can easily say to them, this is not part of our remit. We are not permitted to do this. All right. And that is under legislation. That's under our constitution. We cannot do this. So your best bet is to go to the school principal. Now, a lot of the time, they've already been to the school principal. So you may then actually guide them to what their next step is. So if they've had no joy with the school principal, then you basically go, well, your next step then is to regional office. All right. And there are around about 7 regional offices in Western Australia. So Western Australia is broken up into education regions. Each region has a regional office, and they have they have a lot of staff in there who basically look after that particular region and schools within those regions. So that would be the next step up. No problem. Glad I could help. All right, so this is how the rules of debate work, and this is what the flow is, and this flow chart is in the middle of that little booklet that I was showing you before. And it looks complex, but it's really not. Let's have a look at it. Start of the debate. The motion is moved. All right, we all know that happens. You move the motion, it's got to be seconded. What if it's not seconded? Then it's lapsed. Doesn't happen. We don't just talk about it. We don't discuss it. It's gone. It doesn't happen very often. Usually things are seconded. Right, so the person who came up with, once it's seconded, the person who came up with the idea, the motion, the idea of the motion, put that on the agenda, they get to speak, and they get to speak for longer than anybody else. They get 4 minutes. Rarely do they go that long, but they get 4 minutes. Now, because they're speaking for the motion, the person who's running the meeting, the chairperson, will then say, okay, well, thanks for your time. Thanks for that. Is there anybody to speak against the motion? So you go from for to against, and then you'll go back to for, and then you'll go to against. So you're staggering it back and forth, back and forth. Now, a lot of the time, there will not be people to speak against the motion, but you do need to give opportunity for people to do that. Once you've gone through that, you basically, and you run out of speakers, then the chairperson declares the debate closed. right? Once that debate is closed, then what will happen is the person who moved the motion gets the chance to have a right of reply. Now, they get 2 minutes to do that. They are the only person that has the right to speak twice, the person who came up with the motion, because this second time is their right to rebut arguments. Once that happens and their 2 minutes is up, and a lot of the time they'll say, look, no, I'm fine, I'm happy with that, or I've said my bit. But sometimes they'll rebut. Substantive motion. A substantive motion is just an official name for the motion. Is read out then. So the chairperson does that. The chairperson calls for a vote, and that is usually something like all in favour, and then hands go up, or it might go to a ballot vote, and then of course we have a result. It's either carried or lost, and that's the end of the debate. That's the end of the motion, and we go on to the next one. And here's some wording that sort of covers that. And obviously I will send this out to you tomorrow, so if you wish to use that wording, you're more than welcome to. That wording there is pretty much what I have just gone through. Right? It's fairly simple and obvious wording, but sometimes people do need help with that. So if you need help with that, there it is. Okay, so Cherie has asked, what if everyone agrees, but we want to discuss the detail? Is this done before the vote? Would this come under the for? Yeah, so no, that comes after you've actually finished the debate. So if everybody agrees, then you're actually going to discuss the details of it and how you're going to organise that. Or if you've got a subcommittee, you actually might handball it to a subcommittee to deal with. Right? So that's something you can do as well. Out of that, what you're doing there is that you will then actually come up with things called action items. And action items are basically giving someone a job to do. All right, so Richard's got the job of organising this, and those things are then minuted. So once you've passed it, you will then do the organisation side of it, or better still, handball it to a subcommittee to do that. Okay. No problem. Right, so sometimes you do actually need to move on, and it's very difficult, and I know, and I do training to actually move on sometimes and to get things going and back on track. So there is some wording that can help you out. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you have 30 seconds left. You can only say that if you're using rules of debate, all right? Because you've got 2 minutes to speak, you've got 30 seconds left to keep people on track on time. And this is wording. That's a question I had a little bit earlier. I think was from Gemma. Yes, it was from Gemma. I'm afraid that's beyond the scope of our P&C according to our Constitution and the School Education Act. And you can say that at a meeting, but of course you need to know that, and you need to have the Constitution sitting in front of you. We have digressed. Let's get back on track. I think we have covered the main points. And then once you say that, you go, all right, you take control of that discussion. Again, let's move on to, you're taking control again, moving on. That's an obvious one, but you use that. You've made a great point. So in summary, this is a good one to summarize it. And then once you summarize it, you actually have control of the conversation, and then you move on again. And the last one, we appreciate that viewpoint, but this is not an item on the agenda, reminding people that things should be on the agenda. We can't digress as we have a set finishing time. All right. And you can follow that with, I'd love to have a chat with you after the meeting about that, and we'll talk about it at our next meeting, or maybe our next executive committee meeting. So you're not dismissing them. You're saying what you want to say is important, but it just wasn't done right. Unless, of course, you've got lots of time to make up at the end of the meeting, then you can handle it then. You will get these slides tomorrow, as I said before, and here are some helpful resources too that have a lot of wording that you can use at meetings as well, so you can use those links. You'll note that we're still on 3. So we're spending a fair bit of time on chairperson for all meetings because it's a really, really important part and component. Right, so sometimes you're going to get problems at the meeting. You are going to get members who dominate. Now, if you've got a 2-minute speaking time, and everybody's aware of it, and it's sitting on the table in booklet form, and everybody knows that, you will then have support at the meeting to help you with members who dominate, and it will make it a lot easier for you to deal with them. Members who have side conversations, all right, so that's just downright rude and annoying, and that person who conducts training, I know that's annoying. And the other thing you have to think out of is, well, is have we digressed? Are those people bored? What are they talking about? You can ask them to actually join the conversation. What you're saying, remind them, what they're saying. Do they have an important point to say? And sometimes if they don't, that will shut them up or keep them quiet. But sometimes they will. All right, and it's something that the P&C might need to discuss at some point in the future. So you can make use of that. Members who argue, just make sure that you have standing orders and rules of debate there. And if you've got that sitting there, that will help you out. It's not going to solve your problem completely, but if people in your P&C are immersed in this and they're familiar with it and they're conditioned with the structure of the meeting and the rules of debate, that will help you out immensely. Now, all those might be a bit of a worry, but for me, this last one's a bit more of a worry. Members who don't contribute, because that's a wasted resource. And those people there are the people who are most likely to drift away because they get disinterested. They are maybe a little bit put off by the people who argue or have side conversations who dominate. And they're the people that tend to drift away. And really, that's a big, big loss. Now, sometimes those people are also introverts, and introverts generally don't like to bring their opinion forward straight away. They like to mull over things, and they also like to be asked, all right, and like to organize their thoughts. So here's a little strategy that might help with that, and it's called rounds, and it's very, very simple, very logical as well. All right, so this is how this works. You don't have to have a round table, of course, but put forward the motion or idea. So whatever the motion is, the idea, you read it out. Make sure that is someone second. So if it's actually official motion, you'll need someone to second it if it's a motion. If it's an idea, just a general discussion, then you won't need to second it, of course, because you're just bringing forth an idea. But this is a way that will save you time, and it will also bring out the quieter voices. You give your group 1 minute to think about their opinion, ideas, and take notes, and they can do that, and they can write things down, and they're ready to go. And the more you do this, the more familiar people actually come with the process. So you give them 1 minute. Hey guys, I've got 1 minute for you just to have a think about this, take some notes down, because we're going to do rounds and we're coming around very soon. And then you work from left to right or reverse, whichever way you want to do it. You may stagger that. This time you go from left to right, and the next time from right to left. You get them to state if they are for or against it. That's if it's a motion. And then you get them to speak for a maximum 1 minute. You can extend that to 2 because that's under rules of debate. So you're allowed to do that. And most people will be quite succinct. So if they know the time is on them and they've had a chance to write things down and take a few notes, they will actually be, they will say things quickly. They'll get things done before a minute or 2. They do not have to speak. They can pass if they like. But what you are doing is you are allowing the quieter voices to have the say, and you are controlling the more dominant voices. And everybody gets one chance, or they've got 1 minute to write things down. They've got one chance to actually say what they want to say. Those people who are very quiet have the chance to say something. Now, to start off with, they might just say, oh, I'm for it or I'm against, but they're starting to speak. So the next time you come around, they might say a little bit more. And the next time they might say a little bit more. So it's an idea to bring out those quieter voices within your P&C. And they are usually a great resource. They're just untapped. So look, it's a logical and a simple strategy. It's called rounds, and you're more than welcome to use that, of course. Right, so you've had your meeting. After the meeting, there are still jobs to do. So your secretary will go away and they'll draft the minutes for the meeting. They will take all their notes, which might be 3 or 4 pages of notes, and they will condense them into what are the minutes. Now, of course, we know minutes really should be listing outcomes and action items, what you've decided and who's going to be doing things. They don't list conversations unless people have asked for them to actually be put in the minutes. So it shouldn't be a list of who said what. She said this, he said this. because inevitably that will come back to bite you, because someone will say, hang on, this is in the minutes and I didn't say that, even though they may have. So don't put those types of things in your minutes. They should purely be outcomes and also action items. And then your job will be to follow up with action item members who have action items. That is, who's responsible. So Richard, he's responsible for ringing up racing, gaming, and liquor. Have you done that, Richard? Yeah, I've done that, and here's the information for that. All right. So not micromanaging again, but checking on them and keeping them accountable. All right, so that ends the section on the chairperson for all meetings. Number 4, ensure all office bearers fulfill their duties. And of course, they need to be aware of their duties. In the P&C Constitution, rules 15, 16, and 17 cover the duties of the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. All right, and they might be 4 or 5 dot points there. We're not silly. We know they do a lot more than that, but they are their constitutional duties. And it's a good idea for the president and the vice president of the P&C to set an example when it comes to those duties and make sure they're doing them well. And also, as I said at the beginning, get to know your office bearer as well. Have a coffee with them, talk about them, but also be aware that working closely with them sometimes can be perceived that you have a little purple circle or a little click going in your P&C. So once you're aware of that can happen, that means that you'll take action or exhibit behaviors where people don't arrive at that perception that you are a click or a purple circle. There's a really fine line there, unfortunately. Also remember that there is Rule 14.3, that mechanism within the P&C Constitution that allows you to deal with an office bearer or an executive member that is not doing their duty well. All right. So they might be working against the P&C or the Constitution. They might not be turning up to meetings. They might not be putting the minutes forward or doing their job as a treasurer. And you can't afford to keep them going. Now, we're all human and we all have a job to do, and we all have personal lives and probably business lives and work lives and volunteer lives. And sometimes, a lot of the time, volunteer stuff comes last, which is fair enough as well. But the question is, can that person actually handle that role? So there needs to be a conversation with that person. And a lot of the time, you'll find that there are actually personal things going on with that. You know, there's something going on in their life. And you may ask them, well, look, can you continue to do the role? Would you like to step down? And hopefully they make the correct decision there. Now, sometimes there are people who are just not going to be a productive member of the P&C, and they're doing that willfully. And then you would need to enact Rule 14.3, which is to remove them from the P&C, remove them from the executive committee and from their office bearer position, which is not nice. But you are able to do that under the Constitution. And sometimes just a little bit of a warning beforehand saying, look, we're going down this path. We have to do that. So this is quite public, this path, because it will come to a minute. It will go in the minutes and we'll go to the next meeting. All right. And down this path here, we don't want to go down it. So we're giving you the chance here to, you know, step down from the position or resign, so we don't actually have to go through with this. Hopefully you do not have to go through that, but that mechanism is there within the Constitution that allows you to do that. If you would like a further breakdown of that, please contact the office. Job number 5, the public face of the P&C. Your job as the president is to handle all those hundreds of media inquiries that you get. Now, you may never get any as the president of the P&C. And sometimes you might actually go out and seek them and hunt them down, all right, to get the, you know, you might have done a great nature playground and the local media, their newspaper, website, local community website might be there to actually put that on their website or their newspaper. And you can be proactive with that, but your job as a P&C president is to handle all those things. Make sure that you're aware of site requirements. You can't just invite people onto the grounds. You need to go through proper process with the principal. Please make sure that you're giving a representative opinion. A representative opinion is not your own opinion. It is the opinion of the P&C, and you'll usually have to consult with your executive beforehand. Now, if there are negative things, and sometimes maybe once or twice a year, we do have that with P&Cs, it doesn't happen a lot. Please remember there is no rush. The media has a cycle and they're on to the next story fairly quickly. Make sure you consult with your executive. No comment is in fact a comment, so that's fine. And seek WAXO assistance. We do have a communication and research officer. His name is Jonathan. He works in our office and this is his bread and butter. So if you ever get to the point where you need help, please make sure that you contact us. Hopefully most of the time it's positive stuff and the president is the public face of the P&C. They don't want to do that and the vice president is champing at the bit to actually take that role on. They're more than welcome to do that as well. Now, on that topic of actually giving a role to somebody else, you can delegate roles. So over the years, I've known a couple of presidents who hate running meetings. So they delegate that to somebody else to do it, who likes doing it, all right? Because they hate doing it. They love the rest of their job, but they just don't like that. And sometimes you are going to get people, office bearers in the P&C who don't like a particular part of their job or just can't physically do that. And that's completely fine. You can delegate that to another member to do, just make sure that it's minuted, it's gone through a meeting. The only job role that you cannot delegate is this one. So the office bearers of the P&C and the president, of course, are signatories to accounts. They have that role, that right. So as soon as you become president or a vice president, you are automatically a signatory. So as I said, that role cannot be delegated to anybody else. Make sure that change happens immediately. So if you have someone step down from a role or after the AGM and you need to change signatories, don't dilly-dally with it. Get onto it as quick as you possibly can, because we also know that sometimes banks take their time with this and they complicate the process. So the quicker you get onto it, the better. Over the years, I've known of P&Cs where money has gone missing, and it happens in all associations, not just picking on P&Cs here. But a lot of the time is because of that. Signatories have not been changed, right? So get it done straight away. Make sure you ensure transparency with signatories. Rotate your signatories. It's not always the same people signing all the time. Avoid potential conflicts of interest. This might just be completely obvious. If you are getting a reimbursement or a payment from the P&C, please don't sign that transaction yourself, and don't let any other office bearers do that either. All right. So if the treasurer is getting a transaction, a reimbursement, their name or their signature will not appear on that transaction. And anybody that is in a direct relationship can't co-sign. So a direct relationship is defined as a marriage, a de facto family relationship, and a business relationship is included in that. So last week we had a P&C, and two of the office bearers were also staff members at the school. So one was a deputy and one was the manager of corporate services at the school. Now, they can't sign together because basically they have that same business relationship. So those people with those direct relationships can't actually co-sign. This is quite common that people are related when you go out into country areas and smaller towns, and that just happens, but you need to be aware of that. Question has come up from Cherie. I'm bringing that question up now. Sorry, this is a bit off track, or maybe back in the meeting section. If you have to re-vote in subcommittee members in a general meeting, someone stepped down after the AGM, when do you do this? When do you do this? At any general meeting, you can do that. All right. Doesn't have to be at an AGM. You can do it at your next general meeting. That's fine. Okay, role number 7, ex officio of all subcommittees. So what that means is that they have the right to be part of any subcommittee. So as a president, you have the right to be part of any subcommittee, and this may be delegated to the vice president as well. That doesn't mean you're going to go to every single subcommittee meeting. You've probably got a life. You can't do that type of stuff. But if you wanted to, you would be able to go. You don't have to be voted in as a member. You can go along to that meeting. You can have a say. You can have a vote, because that's your right under the Constitution. So you're ex officio of all subcommittees, and that appears in Rule 18 of the P&C Constitution. Now, separately to that, there must also be an executive committee member on each subcommittee as well. All right. So that is separate. So the president being ex officio doesn't exclude this here. All right. You must still have that. Each of your subcommittees will have what's called a terms of reference, and that is a little mini constitution for them that never contradicts the main constitution or overrides the main constitution. That's called a terms of reference. It outlines the powers and scopes of your scope of your subcommittee. And you can find a whole range of terms of references on the WAXO website, and we have written them for you, and they're in Word format. You can download them and you can edit them how you like, as long as you don't let them contradict the Constitution at all. All right. Make sure that your subcommittees do have a working terms of reference. They need to know exactly what they can and can't do. And of course, there's role 8, which is the last role for the president, is employer responsibilities. Look, it is a business. Just remember that your P&C is a business. You're running a uniform shop. You're running a canteen. You are running a business. And if you've got employees, you need to make sure that they are looked after, and you are all their allowances and awards or whatever they get, they are getting. Their superannuation they are getting. Their work health and safety is being protected. Their privacy is being protected. You need to be familiar with all that as an executive group. Sometimes it's not a bad idea to set up a staff liaison group to deal with your employees, and my suggested composition for that would be your president, your treasurer, and if they're available, your principal, because your principal has a lot of experience in the human resources side of things and hiring people. So if you've got those 3 people available to deal with your employees and then report back to the executive on what's happening with those employees, that would be the ideal situation. And it ensures your employees are looked after, but also standards are upheld within your businesses. Make sure you stay current with legal obligations, and that's industrial instruments, awards, agreements. Make sure that you have set procedures and they are mandatory, and that your employees follow them. And of course, make sure that there is communication with respect to your employees. They are working for your P&C. They are required to have all their allowances and whatever they are given, just like any other employee. And sometimes really it can be frustrating for employees of P&Cs, because a lot of the time they get a new boss every year. The executive changes over, the president changes over, they've got different people to work with every year. And for some employees, that can be quite frustrating. So just remember that the next time that you're dealing with employees as well. I've got 3 questions here that have come up, so I'm going to deal with them one at a time. And Sheree, okay. What if no other exec member offers to go on a subcommittee and president is only one who will? And then your subcommittee can't be formed. You will need to actually have an executive member on there, and that's actually under Rule 18 of the Constitution. All right, so that is separate. And so an executive member will need to put their hand up to go on that subcommittee. And don't forget, you might have people who are on the subcommittee who are like, I want to be on this subcommittee. This is my subcommittee. There's no harm for you voting them in to actually be an executive committee member as well. And that covers everything. Next question has come up from Adib. All right, I'm going to bring that up now. Is the VP ex officio, or will need president approval? VP is never ex officio unless they are standing in for the role of the president. So under the Constitution, if the president is unable to perform their duties, the VP will then step into that role. And for that period of time, they will be ex officio. Question has come up then from Kahana. Is there a recommendation for X amount of members, e.g. more than 20 members, before subcommittees are formed? No, not really. That will come down to what activities your P&C is actually doing. Some P&Cs have a small amount of members, and therefore they won't have subcommittees because they generally deal with everything. all right, as a small P&C. And then when you get to larger P&Cs, and particularly high school P&Cs, you might have lots of subcommittees. So no, not really any recommendation there. Who takes the minutes at a subcommittee meeting? What if the secretary doesn't want to? She does so much already. All right, so that's a good question again, Kohana. So who takes the minutes at a subcommittee meeting? So under the terms of reference, which I talked about before, it's got the roles of the people within the subcommittee, and one of those will be a secretary. Now, the minutes at a subcommittee meeting are not like really official minutes. What you are doing is producing a report to report back to the general meeting of the P&C. So they're not necessarily minutes at all. It's more of a report format, and you'll find a template for that on our website under the templates section. So it can be anybody who's in that subcommittee. It doesn't have to be your P&C secretary. It will be somebody within that subcommittee who said, all right, I'll put my hand up to take notes here. Okay. Now, I have covered the roles, the 8 roles, and I'm now going on to the VP. Now, don't feel shortchanged here, please, Vice Presidents, because the first role here is understudy to the President. And so pretty much everything I've just covered is what you would be doing if you didn't have the President in the position. Because under the Constitution, the President can't fulfill their duties, then the Vice President is their job to step up. And the constitutional duties obviously are preside at meetings, signatory to accounts, and you stand in for President. Right. But of course, we know that a lot of the time you have an incredibly competent President who's doing a lot of things. So apart from that, the Vice President will then be the person who is generally assisting with all roles in the P&C. And the other thing they will be doing is the WAXO liaison role. And you can download this document from our website that explains that role. It's also in our P&C handbook. Their role is to do this, the WAXO liaison. And we've actually officially renamed Vice President to Vice President WAXO liaison. They monitor our communications. Now, we have 3 main forms of communication. We have e-news, we have P&C Voice, and we have our Facebook page. All right. The quickest type of news obviously is Facebook. As soon as we get something, we'll pop it on Facebook, and then e-news, which is every 2 weeks, and then P&C Voice, which is a little bit more comprehensive, but is every term. All right. So sometimes there's a little bit of a time lag with that one. So they monitor our communications, and then they present a 5-minute report down. I know I'm probably pushing it with 5 minutes. It doesn't actually have to be that long, but I'm putting that there anyway, to the P&C meeting. And that would be about what's going on in other P&Cs and what's going on with WAXO. All right. So P&Cs generally operate really, really well by themselves, but they become quite insular. And it's a good idea to look outside to see what other P&Cs are doing. And we know that there are P&Cs within some parts of Perth and regional areas that actually set up little networks on Facebook and contact and talk with each other about those types of things. And that would be part of the job of the WAXO liaison. They're also the person who's in contact with your WAXO state councillor as well. And if you get the opportunity to attend conference, and pretty much this is where the idea of WAXO liaison came from, because we have an annual conference every year. And by the way, WAXO is 100 years old this year, and our conference will probably be the biggest ever this year. And it's held at Crown Resort, and hopefully we don't have to worry about COVID or anything like that, and we can have a great, well-attended conference for our 100th. And this, as I say, this is where the idea of WAXO liaison came from, because our conferences are wonderful things, and we have great guest speakers, we have great workshops, we have great entertainment, we have great food, which is always important. But the thing that people take away from our conference more than anything else is a chance to network with other P&Cs and share their trials and tribulations and victories, and steal ideas from other P&Cs and share your own ideas. But instead of doing that just once a year, the idea with the WAXO liaison is to take that throughout the year. All right. So other possible duties also for the VP: general assistance to other people, to the secretary, to the president, and also to the treasurer. Wherever they can help out, to help out. They can also act as a recruitment and engagement coordinator, and that requires some special skills. We do have a publication on our website which addresses that as well. So it's a good idea to download that, and that is basically about working with the school community and engaging the school community. So that person, their job actually would be to engage people and to get people to help out with your P&C and to bring in prospective members. And then, of course, they could also be the person that is that executive subcommittee representative as well. So they are some other possible duties, but the main two are as an understudy to the president and also as the WAXO liaison. Just looking for questions here. It looks like one came up and then disappeared. So, okay, all right, actually, there it is. Gemma, general question, if I may. Of course you may. What are the best ways to network with other presidents and vice presidents and share ideas of successful fundraising, subcommittee programs, etc., please? Okay, so probably one of the best ways, obviously, is annual conference every year. That is, the way you can do that every year, and then you actually form connections. You get ideas from them, but you also get email addresses and phone numbers and Facebook addresses. And the other way too is to get onto Facebook if you're a member, or to get onto any type of social media and to find a local P&C that is in your area and ask to join their page or like their page or make contact with them through that way. All right. And you'll find that most P&Cs are actually looking for that as well. That's one of the ideas also as the WAXO liaison to help out with that. Sharia said there's a great Facebook page called the Fundraising Whisperer, and she is based in Queensland, and can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she does come to our conference every now and then and presents at our conference, but she does have a great website as well. And she might be able to help you with that. Look, if you do want to be able to contact P&Cs in your local areas, obviously we do have contact details, but we can't give them out. But we are more than happy if you want to give us your contact details, is to actually contact P&Cs and say, hey, this person is actually looking for you to contact them, but we will need your information first and your permission first in order to do that. Okay, but obviously we cannot give personal details of other members of other P&Cs.